My name is Seth, and I'm representing Southeast Asia, which is going to be impossible, but I will try. Let me share a little bit about interesting facts about our region. Now, I don't know how many of you have heard of, I don't know if, okay, I don't know how many of you heard of the Valerie Perez Circle, which pretty much says that over 50% of the world's population falls within the circle. So that's why we really believe, as we partner with some of the Indian brothers, that this is a very important part of the world. Africa and South Pacific, they're all important. But I really believe that with the 53% of the world's population inside the circle, it's going to be a very important thing that we're trying to do as we're trying to reach this part of the world. So we're trying to involve the 53% of the world here. The second thing is influencing pop culture. That's one of the things that Southeast Asia can offer. And it's kind of interesting because I don't know if you know who these guys are. Do you know? If you do not know, I don't know what to say. Anyway, so you got to know who they are. They're BTS, and they are the #1 pop music group in the whole world. They have broken many Guinness Book of World Records of followers on Instagram and Twitter. It's incredible the influence that they have had globally around the world. So that's why from this area, it's important that we're talking about the influence of pop culture. The next one that we want to talk about is impacting the metaverse. Now, I don't know if you know this picture, but if you are over 40 years old, you should know this picture. There are aliens invading us. This is Space Invaders. But we have come a long way from Space Invaders, just to let you know. Now, this is what we're looking at when we're talking about e-gaming. And some of the incredible things that are coming out from Southeast Asia is because this is probably the #1 thing that's the next generation. And we're talking about they have tournaments that fill stadiums this big. They have these guys who they're not studying, okay? They are not studying. They are intensely playing the video games, and they're over the top. They even have uniforms and trophies, and these guys from South Korea, they are hardcore. So they have come a long way. In this region, there are about 11 countries in this place, and about 684 million people represented, and the average age is about 30. It's an ancient Chinese secret. We always look young, so that's the average age, all right? So let's keep that in mind. And the next thing we know, I want to talk a little bit about the problems that we want to solve. We just came up with the big fives. And as we were talking together in the last couple conversations, we're going to try to narrow it down, but these are the things that we talked about, the big fives. The family issue, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. The identity, as many of you know, they place their identity on and their worth on material things and success and what they were able to get. And then values. A lot of the values are it doesn't line up with biblical values, and we understand many of them are not believers. So we want to speak into that, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And the fourth thing is empowerment. As many of you know, in Asian countries, a lot of it deals with hierarchy. And so everyone defers to the older person rather than empowering the younger generation. Another issue is the issue of gender. As you know, from this part of the world, women are looked down upon, or they're not given positions. So we want to speak into this area of empowerment. And then the last one is self-sufficiency, is that we've been taught to trust in ourselves and really ask, and not really ask for help. And so we have to go and figure it out ourselves. And so the two that I want to really focus in on are family and then values. These are the two things that we were talking about, Jason and Kevin and I were just talking about this yesterday as they were up till 1 something as we're doing Zoom in our think tank section. And we're just talking about how there's a complete breakdown in Southeast Asia with the family. Now, this is the irony, because we value family and honor, that's really important. But there's a breakdown of the family. And so what we're seeing is that, some of you probably saw this in the news, but the birth rate in Asia, in Southeast Asia, is dropping. In fact, even in Korea, they were very concerned because no one's going to they might not even have a country in years to come. So that's why birth rate is dropping. And also the divorce rate is increasing every year in this region. And that's why as we are really praying about this, we're asking God to raise up some more role models and mentors, and I'll address that a little bit later. And for the situation with the values, all I can say is that they are really putting their identity in temporal things. Things such as luxury goods, things that cannot satisfy. So they have a lot of stuff, but once again, their identity and their worth and some of the values, it's going to lead them to emptiness and a sense of hopelessness. Let me give you two examples so that you understand where we're coming from. Is that the suicide rate is the highest in Asia in the whole world. And as many of you heard, in Japan it's one of the highest, but Korea has caught up, and there have been more people dying and passing away because of suicide. Even in Hong Kong, about 5 years ago, it was the highest suicide rate in the history of Hong Kong. So, of course, there's a lot of different reasons that happened in the last 5 years, but we're seeing an increased number of suicide rates in Asia. Another thing that we're talking about in terms of values is that there are many transactional, as we're talking about this transactional piece, is that there are many people who are young girls who are actually really inspired by other girls who are entering into these escort relationship with these older men, because by giving, it's kind of like, as they give a service to them, then they get back a designer bag, they get other things. So we're seeing a value that has to change by the power of the Holy Spirit. So once again, this is something that's it's a concern for us. So the change that we want to create as we talk about this, and we just simply put it that we want to revive the next generation to reimagine how to be kingdom citizens with kingdom values to reclaim the purposes of God. That's what we're praying for. That's what we're asking God to do in our region. And so there's some 4 key aspects of bringing about this change, and we've been talking about this. And because one of the first things that has to happen is this idea of just informational. There needs to be awareness that what we're chasing after, what we're going for, is not going to satisfy. So we're talking about informational things that we have to give to the people. And then personal, that there has to be this personal conviction that they are empty, they need something greater. In Asian culture, you just do what the older people are telling you to do, and you just do it mindlessly. And we're praying that there will be personal conviction on some of these things. And then relational, because in Asia, there's a relational piece is very, very important. And also that's how the discipleship that we've been talking about will begin to happen. And then lastly, transformational, that they will experience the power of God, and we're believing that those things can help turn a whole generation and for the gospel of Jesus Christ. So the question now becomes, what can we contribute to the globe? There are 3 things we talked about. Was simple faith. You know, it's kind of like, because the Bible said it, we got to believe it, and we got to do it. And so you'll see that in Asia and what God is doing, a sense of obedience and willing to pay the price to follow Jesus Christ. And so we want to leverage that for the glory of God. And then the second thing is suffering. As many of you know, in this region, there have been a lot of wars and occupation and all the stuff that's going on. And through it, there's a sense of the suffering culture that has been built, learning how to persevere and hard working. And so we're praying that God can use that to leverage that so that we can have a greater impact in the global world there. And then solidarity, that if you want to mobilize people, do it in Asia, because there's not only volunteerism, but there's a sense of wanting to move together as a whole group. So that's something that we've been talking about. And then what do we need help with? Well, there are 2 things. We need tools. As we talked about, the values and the family are the 2 things that kind of stick out for us. And so we need more tools on like parenting, and also about just marriages and how to have good marriages. Now, one of the things that I don't know if Jiyoung's here, but one of the things I was getting to know her, and she told me that there were 4 generations on both sides who are pastor's family, and that is unheard of. I think she might have seen it in my face. I was just like, what? Because in Asia, in Southeast Asia, usually it's first generation, that person who just came to know the Lord. Sometimes it's just 2 generations at the most. So we're talking about that there are there's a lack of modeling and examples of what it means to be a Christ-centered family. And so that's what we need from some of you, where there's a rich heritage of generations of people and with great marriages and parenting. Another thing we need is a sense of training. And we're This time is up, huh? Okay, sorry about that. And then I'm hearing some music. Okay, and I do not want to rub. I'm out of here. I'm out of here. And we need training where we need more coaches. People will walk with us and help us. So, amen.
Come on.